Residual Dao Ji, 12,000 years, Millennium. Millennium, 1,000 blessings, the beginning of the Emperor's journey, and the renewal of all things. People all practice the 5 paths, while others may practice the 7 laws. Only I can rebuild my golden body and forge eternal life. Chapter 1. Millennium. You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. The remnants of the Tao period, 12,000 years old, is worth a millennium. Welcoming a millennium and receiving 1,000 blessings. Based on thousands of years, as a grand celebration of the ancient spiritual human race, on New Year's Eve, the highly poisonous 3 towns transformed into a joyful ocean, decorated with lights and colorful decorations, with crowds weaving like a web, as lively as day. In the more than 100 villages within the jurisdiction of the 3 towns, there are only scattered stars, as if shrouded in endless darkness, difficult to break free from, and trapped in a gloomy and melancholic cloud. A group of people and horses quietly passed through the villages. Leading the way was a young gentleman with a white face and a pair of bright and lively eyes. He looked straight ahead, dressed in white hunting clothes, holding a folding fan in his hand, making him even more outstanding in temperament. Following her was a bouncing young girl in green, lively and agile. At this moment, the girl glanced at the direction of Liuzhen. Even if it was far away, she could feel the noise of the festival. Her heart yearned for it, and her eyes immediately dimmed. She said angrily, "Senior brother, it's rare to encounter such a grand occasion in the millennium. Even ordinary people can enjoy themselves, but we have to carry out this mission. It's really annoying." The young master didn't turn back when he heard the words, and said calmly, "If you're a junior sister, don't complain. Completing the task is the top priority. Also, when we team up, the master is afraid that you'll be too playful, so I'll keep an eye on you. If you can't complete the task on time, you know the master's methods." The girl's body trembled imperceptibly for a moment, as if thinking of something terrifying. Her tone couldn't help but be low. "Got it, senior brother Chengfeng. Let's hurry up a bit. We must surpass the other 6 senior brothers and complete the task in the first group." After speaking, he quickened his pace and tugged at the vine in his hand, causing a wail in the team behind him. Through the dim moonlight, one could vaguely distinguish that they were originally a group of strong farmers. However, at this moment, each person was bound by a vine and their hands were strung together, with fine spikes inserted into the flesh and blood. There were even threads of toxins invading their bodies, making them confused and powerless, walking through the forest like walking corpses. A group of strong men were pulled by the girl like driving corpses, unsure where they were going. The girl suddenly turned her head, bared her teeth and smiled. Her 2 tiger teeth were exposed, and a green light flashed in her eyes. Her originally cute face now appeared somewhat eerie. Sure, this woman is really not a good person. At the end of the team, Youming's wrist was pricked with a thorn, causing him pain. He was refreshed and looked up to see the scene. He took a cold breath and quickly turned back. Subsequently, his virulence erupted, his whole body became sore and weak, and he could only walk step by step. He had a youthful appearance, a slender and lean figure, and hiding behind a strong man like an iron tower could perfectly conceal his figure. Youming was lost in thought about the daytime events. He and these men all came from Lijia village. During the day, Chengfeng led his junior sister to catch the strong men, gathered the whole village, and said they were going to pick someone to build a cave for the lord of the poisonous lord. The village chief of Lijia village dared not refuse, knowing that the lord was the absolute king of this land, holding the power of life and death for the common people in the 3 towns. There was no other reason, only because he was a wizard with profound and unpredictable abilities. But Li Tai, the son of village chief Li, was arrested 6 months ago for the same reason and has not returned yet. So he bravely bowed and asked, "May I ask when the master's cave will be repaired? Can the previous group of villagers and this group come back together?" Chengfeng unfolded his folding fan and slowly fanned the wind, showing no signs of joy or anger. Once the cave is repaired, he will naturally come back. Before village chief Li could reply, the young girl Lu Ruoruo suddenly shouted, "Senior brother, one person has escaped." Everyone looked outside the village and indeed saw a villager running on the field ridge. "He can't leave." I saw Chengfeng spreading his palm and a mist-red ball floating out, spinning slowly. He fanned out a gust of wind and muttered, "Yen Luo chasing after me, go." Red Maru turned into a stream of light and caught up with the villagers in an instant. The villagers stumbled a few steps and fell to the ground, struggling a few times without moving. It seemed that they were no longer alive. "All right, senior brother is mighty." Lu Ruoruo jumped and applauded and cheered. The people of Lijia village were silent as if they were cicadas, all bowing their heads in silence. In the crowd, Youming's eyelids twitched. What kind of ability is this? "Master, spare your life. Master, spare your life." Village chief Li knelt down with the villagers, kowtowing and begging for mercy. Chengfeng seemed to have done something insignificant and ordered, "Find me 30 strong men before sunset, one less, and the whole village will sit together." Then I found a relatively clean house to practice, without any worries about the future. If Lu Ruoruo couldn't calm down, he would pull out the vines pinned to his waist and turn them into whips. Whenever he felt uncomfortable, he would pull them down, causing chaos in the Li family village. Youming took a few steps forward to help the village chief, who was already in tears. He choked up and said to the villagers, "First deal with Li Da's body, and then discuss which family will come out." Everyone came to Li Da's body, and Youming turned him over. He saw blood bleeding from his 7 orifices and black lips, and he died from poisoning. Youming was horrified and frightened by Chengfeng's methods. Li Cun Changxi didn't feel any strange and instructed the villagers to carry the body back to the village. He explained to Youming, "You are not a member of the poisonous lord, and you may not be clear about it. Our lord is called Pan, and he is a poison mage. The 2 disciples who came today are both his disciples. It is not uncommon to have the ability to poison people." Youming exclaimed indignantly, "Uncle Li, can a mage easily disregard human life?" "Ah, you're still young." Village chief Li shook his head and said, "The Lord is an absolute heaven in a territory. The mage is towering and has unpredictable abilities. He can kill and take away ordinary people like us. The poison mage's desire to kill the 3 towns is just a matter of his imagination. Besides, Youming, you must not act impulsively." He was afraid that Youming would act impulsively in his youth and offend the mage, which would implicate the village. "Can't we move the clan? Leave the poison lord?" "It's not that simple. Leaving the poison realm is nothing more than going to another realm and being enslaved by a new lord. As long as you're an ordinary person, it's the same wherever you go. You came from another realm, don't you know? Oh, forget that you've lost your memory." Village chief Li patted his forehead and thought of this. Youming suddenly appeared in Lijia village on a snowy day, dressed thinly and hungry, and was taken in by me. He just seemed to have lost his memory, not knowing where he came from or where he went, not understanding anything, clean as a blank sheet of paper. However, this child has a good nature and is also quick at work. Tsue is of the same age as him and has a good impression of him. I believe he will not object to being recruited as a burden. Now that Tyre is not returning, we need to make plans. Early village chief Li had far-reaching thoughts, but now that the situation is in trouble, he can only temporarily suppress these thoughts and pass the current hurdle before discussing them in the future. Lord Mage. If I could have this power. Youming pondered in his heart and secretly clenched his fist. The 2 of them had different thoughts and returned home. "Dad, Minga, are you okay? I saw Li Da's body being carried into the temple just now, and I didn't dare to go out." The young girl Tsue was petite and delicate, with a gentle tone, although her coarse cloth and plain clothes did not conceal her softness. Seeing the 2 of them safely return, I breathed a sigh of relief. Little sister, we're fine, Youming responded with a smile. Village chief Li waved his hand and said, you go back to your room and don't come out. I need to think about something. Tsue obediently returned to the room, where there was a woodcut statue. The figure of the statue was blurry and the specific shape could not be seen clearly. She knelt and sat in front of the cattail, her hands clasped together, praying in her heart. A millennium and 1,000 blessings, good times come, Li, the village chief, sat down in the hall and fell into the long exam. Although there are 300 households in Li family village, it is not easy to select 30 strong men. No one is willing, they are all the pillars of the family. Besides, only a batch of people were arrested 6 months ago. I don't know what happened to the Lord, why has the frequency of arresting people become so fast? If it continues like this, there will be only elderly, weak, women, and children left in the village. Li De is already the only male servant in the family, so he wants to escape. Li, the village chief, knew everything about the village and couldn't help but feel anxious. At this moment, he suddenly heard Youming say, Uncle Li, for a quota of 30 people, count me in. Chapter 2. Magic Cave. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Upon hearing that Youming had proposed to repair the cave for the Poison Lord, village chief Li couldn't help but be taken aback. This was not a good job. Li Tai had been there for half a year and had not returned yet. He already had some bad thoughts in his heart. No, you're not from Li family village, you don't have to go. Li village chief firmly refused. Youming smiled and advised, Uncle Li, if it weren't for you saving me, I might have frozen to death and starved to death long ago. I've eaten from 100 families, and you and the villagers have raised me for more than half a year. Even if it's a favor I'll give back to Li's village, he said. Besides, I have my own considerations this time. If there's a chance, I'll see if I can learn magic and become a wizard. Ah. I see. Your ambition is quite impressive. Village chief Li stood up and paced in front of the hall. After a few rounds, he made a decision and said, well, I originally wanted to keep you. Since you have this ambition, I won't stop you. However, I heard that the Lord has 8 disciples, all of whom are children of the 3 towns family. Our village residents have little chance, so you need to be mentally prepared. Youming nodded to express his understanding, but he didn't have much confidence either. Let's act according to the situation. Then village chief Li asked Youming to pay attention to his son's news. As they had only been together for a few days, he was afraid that he would forget, so he said something about Li Tai, especially the small black birthmark below the corner of his left eye. Youming listened carefully and remembered it in his heart. Subsequently, village chief Li went to busy himself with the other 29 spots, and finally gathered 30 people before sunset. The sunset has a lingering glow, and the ends of the earth share a sunset glow. At the Li family village threshing ground, there stood 30 men, all full of blood and strong in body, reflecting the glow as if they were all cast from copper water. Except for one young man who was thin and thin, he was generally able to satisfy the mage. Village chief Li really dare not deceive, afraid that the mage will poison the entire village and cause a flood of grief. Villagers kept coming to bid farewell, and the cries of relatives were like the howling of night owls. The sadness of parting stained the air of the entire village. Not bad, I'm very satisfied. Unfortunately, an untimely voice came, and Lu Ruoro and Chengfeng were in pairs. Judging from their appearance, they were truly a couple of immortals. The latter scanned the room and nodded, while the former chuckled. The vines around his waist turned into ropes, restraining the strong men parading around the square twice like pulling livestock. Finally, seeing Chengfeng leave first, he left Li family village amidst the frightened gazes of the crowd. Those gazes showed no trace of hatred, and ordinary people dared not even harbor resentment towards the mage, only wanting to live. Youming didn't know how long he had been walking, until the sky was about to brighten and fish bellies turned white on the horizon. During this period, the witch left alone once, and when she returned, she excitedly said to Chengfeng, "Senior brother, the other senior brothers have not returned yet. We are definitely the first." Chengfeng still looks indifferent. Lu Ruoro took back the vines and pinned them around his waist, patrolling the team and scolding, "Give me all the energy. If anyone wilts their heads and minds and makes the master dissatisfied, there will definitely be no good end." Until he reached the end of the team, it seemed like he realized that there was a skinny young man like Youming, who was out of place with the majestic team. He was so angry that he took off the vines and gave him a whip. He even said that a mouse droppings ruined a pot of soup. Youming felt a burning pain in his right shoulder and back, as if his flesh had been torn apart by being pulled. What a powerful vine whip. He dared not say much and silently cleared the thorns in his hand. "Humph, full speed ahead." Lu Ruoro gave the order, and there were no more obstacles along the way. Everyone trekked through mountains and rivers, and had already left the jurisdiction of the 3 towns without a trace of people. As we delve deeper into the mountains, the vegetation gradually withers, green is replaced by gray, and even a few mountains are completely dead. The rocks are exposed in the air and are mercilessly weathered by time. There are no insects or birds chirping here. It's so quiet that it's suffocating, as if it's coming to a dead end. The final team stopped in front of a cliff, with a flat and smooth section that seemed to be cut out by a divine weapon's sharp blade. There was a couplet engraved on the wall. "In the past, the 5 elements shone brightly, endless path refining 7 stars. There is a cave opening at the bottom of the cliff, and a cold and gloomy wind is blowing out from inside. It is as cold and gloomy as a demon's huge mouth, ready to devour someone." Above the cave entrance, there is a plate engraved with characters indicating that the poisonous lord has arrived at the cave. "It's really a cave," Youming muttered softly. "Are you bringing us to dig the mountains?" The men in Lijia village whispered to each other. Lu Ruoro, who was familiar with the way, plunged into the cave and quickly disappeared into the darkness. Her words were still echoing at the entrance, I'll go report to Master Pan first." Chengfeng shook his head slightly and said to the crowd, "Follow me, don't wander around, otherwise you will bear the consequences." After finishing, Shi Shiran walked into the cave. The men hurriedly followed, all of whom had seen the methods of success. Although he appeared elegant, he was actually a master who valued human life like grass. Youming walked at the end of the team, and at the moment he entered the cave, something inexplicable brushed his body, feeling very strange. He looked back at the world outside and suddenly had an intuition that perhaps many people would never be able to leave this cave again. He shook his head, drove the idea out of his mind, and turned to look at the environment. Entering the cave is a passage, about 3 arms wide and 2 people high. The ground and mountain walls are both very flat, which seems to be carefully constructed. Fluorescein is irregularly embedded around and emits a faint light, making the figure in front indistinct, sometimes stretched and sometimes twisted, like a fierce ghost marching in a demon cave, very terrifying. After walking for a while, forks began to appear, and then more and more forks appeared, resembling a honeycomb. Everyone was dizzy and disoriented, and if there was no one to lead them, they would have to get lost. Youming was also shrouded in confusion, but he kept an eye out. Based on the special distribution of certain fluorites, he imprinted some special patterns such as triangles, 5 stars, and 9 palaces in his heart. At the same time, he could feel the terrain moving downwards. If he wanted to escape from this place in the future, he could run higher and use the fluorite pattern as a reference. When the terrain finally became flat and we finally walked out of the corridor, the light source turned into a night pearl on the ceiling, making everyone's eyes slightly brighter. This is a spacious karst cave, with prisons built on the walls of giant stones. Some are vacant, while others are still holding people inside, but there is no noise coming out. "Go in, your new home has arrived." "The air here doesn't smell good," said Chengfeng, pointing to an empty prison. Finally completing the task, he couldn't help but joke. The villagers couldn't seem to come out laughing, but as they said, they rushed in. There is no prison door in the prison, and there is a vessel hanging at the door, not knowing its purpose. Youming accidentally bumped his head as he walked by, causing it to shake. The interior space is not large or small, and standing for 30 people doesn't seem crowded, but everyone wants to lie down and sleep on all fours. Maybe it's not enough. Chengfeng did not leave, waiting in place. Not long after, a middle-aged man arrived, and Lu Ruoruo obediently followed behind, changing the previous spiciness. Chengfeng quickly put away the folding fan and respectfully saluted. "See you, Pancher." The people in the prison also knew the identity of this middle-aged man, the lord-level figure in charge of the power of the 3 towns, Poison Mage, Pan. Some people lower their heads and dare not look directly, some people also look at the plate and remember the appearance of the lord, so that they can use it as a capital to boast about when they return to the village in the future. Youming looked around and saw that Pan looked ordinary, just like a common person in the Li family village. There was nothing special to describe, and it was true that people cannot judge their appearance. Pan glanced around these strong men with strong qi and blood, very satisfied. "Fonger, roar, the group of people you have chosen is very good, enough to last for half a month. Cicada, go." Youming's eyes were sharp, and he could clearly see a cicada flying out of the shoulder of the wizard's tray, slowly and leisurely flying into the container at the entrance of the prison, without any movement. Only the bewildered prisoners and the blood vessels that shook once again remained. Chapter 3. Blood Cicada. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Step aside. Oh, I'm exhausted. Li Man pushed away the villagers around him, occupying a spot against the wall and lying down to rest. After walking all night, everyone was tired. Li Guzi, who was pushed away, took a few bites but didn't shout or curse. This Li Man was originally a thug in the village, nicknamed Man. With the help of his many brothers and his own brute force, he often occupied farmland and water sources, and only allowed others to divide the canal when his field was irrigated enough. Whoever dares to argue will be scolded by his mother tiger to the point of being bloody, unable to beat or scold, teaching him to be arrogant. Forget it, don't argue with him, come and sit here. Li Guzi was pulled to another seat by the villagers to rest, glaring at the barbarian with hatred. Feeling tired, he couldn't help but take a nap. Before long, snoring started all over. Youming, on the other hand, was not tired. He stood up and tiptoed to the door, tiptoeing to look into the dish. Unfortunately, the height was slightly lower and the light was unclear, so he did not see the cicada. He frowned and sat against the wall, closing his eyes in contemplation. The mage glanced at us and left without mentioning anything about repairing the cave or making any arrangements for us. It seems that it was just a cover. Where have the people who were previously arrested gone? Where are their people from other villages? The number of people in other cells is obviously not enough, are they locked in other places? The village chief's son Li Tai also doesn't know which cell he is in. Do you want to go out and take a look? It seems like no one is watching. With a movement in his heart, Youming immediately gave up on this idea. He looked up and thought to himself. Master Pan personally released this cicada, so he definitely wouldn't shoot it aimlessly. Perhaps it was as a warning. Once someone goes out without permission, he may immediately know the consequences, suppress impulses and gather energy. There is no time in the mountains, and I don't know how long it has been. The men in Lijia village woke up and felt unbearable hunger in their stomachs. They had not eaten anything for a long time. Goo goo, I don't know whose stomach is growling with hunger, and this sound triggered a chain reaction, causing many people's stomachs to scream. I want to eat. Yes, why haven't we served the food yet? I'm starving to death. No one cares about us, right? The villagers shouted. Once someone spoke up first, everyone had confidence and started arguing. A few people walked to the door, just about to go out. Wait a minute. Youming reached out and stopped them. A few people looked at him with confusion. They knew that Youming lived at the village chief's house, and there were rumors that the village chief was interested in this kid and wanted to marry his daughter to him. For the sake of the village chief's face, they were all very polite to him. Moreover, Youming voluntarily joined them, sharing the quota, and making these men look up to him. Don't go out yet. The situation is unclear, let's take a look before we talk, said Youming. What if no one comes? We can't keep going hungry, Li Guzi hesitated. Get out of my way. At this moment, Li Man, who had fallen asleep, strode towards him, separated a few people, and moved his muscles and bones, making a crackling sound all over his body. He is a domineering person and indeed possesses such strength. With a tiger head and leopard eyes, he is as strong as a bull. He looked around and saw that no one was against him, so he let out a proud cold snort. Leading the way, 1 foot stepped out of the prison door. Pa! Youming grabbed Li Man's arm, feeling thicker than his own calves and as sturdy as iron, almost missing it. Li Man, don't go out yet. I think it's dangerous. Youming advised. In this environment, he wants to strive for every living force to cope with unexpected situations, especially for a man like Li Man who has one of the best physiques. Unexpectedly, Li Man became furious and shook off Youming. The fierce thrust made him stand unsteadily, and he rubbed back a few steps. Fortunately, Li Guzi and his companions helped him in time. Li Man scolded, Kid, they dare not provoke me. How dare you stop me? Don't even say you're not the village chief's uncle, even if you are, I won't bother you. Youming took a deep breath and squinted his eyes as he looked at him, no longer obstructing him. Li Guzi said angrily, Man, Brother Ming kindly reminds you that kindness is like a donkey's liver and lungs. Good words are hard to persuade the damn ghost, let him go, said a villager. They are all from the same village, we should unite. For a while, the villagers helped Youming speak and even scolded Li Man. How could Li Man bear it? He leaned aside and started cursing at them. After being nurtured by his mother tiger, he couldn't stand it and started drooling. Over time, he showed a tendency to take action. Bang! 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 Ancient Spirit Avenue has undergone vicissitudes of life. Bang! 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 6-winged cicadas chirping in the vastness. At this moment, the eerie sound of bangs and songs came, accompanied by deep and shallow footsteps, as well as the creaking of wheels, and the village people's quarrels were instantly interrupted. Li Man was so scared that he withdrew his feet. Youming was chewing on the meaning of 2 lines of poetry while listening carefully. The sound of sucking and swallowing came from the silent prison ahead. It seems that the meal has been served, and surprise flashed in the eyes of Li Guzi and others. Everyone listened to the footsteps, walking and stopping, getting closer and closer, not knowing whether it was anticipation or fear in their hearts. Bang! 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 Finally, a cart stopped outside the prison door, and an old cripple knocked a few times. He bent over and struggled to pick up 2 wooden barrels from the cart and placed them at the door, then turned around to leave. Hey, old cripple, what are these things? Li asked rudely. The old cripple paused and looked back. What kind of face is that? One eye socket is deeply sunken, there is no nose bridge, only 2 holes open close with breathing. The lips seem to be sewn together and then roughly torn open, covered in cracks and wrinkles. The sparse and messy hair cannot cover it. Li Man took a breath of cold air and was startled. The cripple grinned and said, Food, meals, there's only 1 meal a day. Li Man looked into the bucket. It was a mess. It was a mixture of congee and something. 2 wooden spoons floated on it. It was also called rice. Is this for people to eat? Li Man suppressed the urge to kick over and glared angrily at the old man. Hey! Hey! The old man was not afraid at all, just smiled inexplicably. Li Man became infamous and was previously boycotted by a group of people. Now, even an old cripple who was delivering food didn't pay much attention to him. He couldn't help but feel angry from his heart and evil towards the edge of his heart. He stepped out of the prison door in 3 or 2 steps and grabbed the old man, like a dragon holding a thin monkey with its fist raised high. If this punch was struck hard, everyone had no doubt that the old man's head would explode like a watermelon. Speaking in a blink of an eye, a lightning-like shadow shot into Li Man's body. His body shook violently, and he released his fist with no force in his hand. The old man landed lightly and skillfully, unharmed. "What's getting into my body? Get out of here, get out of here. Help me, Li Man's body bulged in multiple places, as if something was wriggling inside him. No matter how much he slapped it, it was of no use. Soon, his voice became weaker and weaker, and his fingers were powerless to grab the old man's face before collapsing with a loud bang. Li Man died. In just a few breaths, the iron tower-like man was drained of blood by something inside his body, his face pale like a fierce ghost, and his body shrank and shrunk in half a circle. A cicada broke through its bones from its heavenly spirit and sucked in fresh blood. Its 6 wings and abdomen turned red with bleeding, enchanting and cold. Blood cicada. Blood cicada. The old man looked like a madman, devoutly prostrating himself on the ground, constantly worshipping until the blood cicada sank into the vessel. Hey! Hey! The old man grinned and pointed to the corpse on the ground, saying with a smile. Rice, eat. You can't escape, just like him, you'll all die. Chapter 4. Gambling Life. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The old cripple carried Li Man's body onto the car and pushed it forward, unsure where it would be thrown. Li Guzi sat slumped on the ground, panting heavily and sweating profusely. Youming pulled him up. Thank you so much. Li Guzi quickly thanked and cast a grateful gaze. There are 2 layers of meaning. Just now, if it weren't for Youming blocking them out, they would have taken Li Man 1 step ahead and become corpses on the cart. What should we do next? The villagers gathered around, panicked and lost their minds. Seeing that Youming was relatively calm, they all looked at him one after another. Although Youming is the youngest and weakest in physique, everyone still regards him as the backbone. Let's eat first. Only when we're full can we have the energy to think about other things, said Youming. He remembered that the old man had said several times about eating, and he was afraid that there was still something famous in the meal. If he didn't eat, something bad would happen again. Yes, eat. Li Guzi took the lead in carrying the rice bucket at the door, but deliberately avoided the cicada dish, as if the killing god did not exist as long as he did not look. However, everyone fell silent as they looked at the 2 barrels of rice. This is really not something that people eat. Although they are all farmers, they also have rice and vegetables in their daily lives. They can also eat chicken, duck, fish and meat during festivals. How could they have eaten such things before? Li Guzi gritted her teeth, her heart turned flat, and she took a spoonful and scooped it into her mouth. She didn't dare to taste it and swallowed it directly. Nausea, it's too unpleasant. Li Guzi let out a nauseous sound and forced himself to hold back. If it weren't for the fact that this was where everyone slept, he would have vomited. Wave your hand and say you won't eat anything. Others naturally won't try when they see this. Sitting or paralyzing, using sleep to resist hunger. The brightness of the night pearl remains unchanged for a long time, making it difficult to distinguish whether it is day or night. Youming sat against the wall, still not sleeping. His physique is a bit special, he can persist for 3 or 4 days without eating, drinking, or sleeping. If he gets stuck in a turtle rest state, his heart rate, pulse, and breathing can slow down and almost stop, and he can persist for a longer time. When he was at the village chief's house, he had a normal schedule and did not show any difference, so the villagers were unaware of this. He saw that some villagers were starving and couldn't bear it anymore. In the end, he quietly squeezed his nose and took a few bites of food. He saw some villagers having nightmares, shouting loudly, and waking up feeling lost and disoriented. He saw some villagers secretly wiping their tears, and the man didn't flick his tears lightly, but he didn't reach the desperate situation. All sentient beings have 100 forms, and he silently watches. Helpless and unable to protect oneself. When the villagers quieted down and there was only heavy snoring left, Youming's eyelids jumped violently, and the cicada dish moved. How could he not pay attention? From the moment the blood cicada entered, his remaining light remained fixed there. I saw the blood cicada slowly and leisurely fly out, circling around everyone's heads before finally disappearing into Li Guzi's body. Perhaps due to eating food, Li Guzi remained motionless. When the blood cicada flies out, it remains as enchanting as blood. Take 2 to 3 breaths. Youming closed his eyes dejectedly, feeling a bit hopeless at the speed of the blood cicada's feeding. I guessed wrong. Eating food is the first to suffer, and those who don't eat can survive for a few days. But what's the use of it? Starvation is also death. Li Guzi is dead. The next day, the villagers were horrified to discover the deceased, who, like Li Man, had been drained of blood. His skin was as pale as paper, and he had shrunk half a circle. The shadow of death once again enveloped everyone's heads. What to do? What to do? Bang! 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 The ancient spirit avenue has undergone vicissitudes of life. Bang! 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 6-winged cicadas chirping in the vastness. When time came to release the food again, there were 20.8 living people in the prison, and like Youming, there were less than 10 people who had not eaten for 2 days and 2 nights. The old cripple arrived, put down 2 buckets of rice, and said, "Throw out yesterday's bucket along with the dead." He probably didn't see Li Guzi's body, but he was certain that someone must have died. The villagers simply followed suit and brought in the buckets of rice. Eating, not eating, this is a problem. Youming silently thought to himself, aren't you afraid to come in, or are you too lazy to take action? But even blood cicadas can kill in prison, and we dare not touch them. Most villagers still eat it, and if they don't eat it for 2 days, they can still carry it. It's really difficult to persist without replenishing some water. A villager saw Youming sitting in the corner of the wall for a long time without moving, seemingly not eating or drinking, so he scooped a spoonful and handed it to him. Youming shook his head and said weakly, "I can't eat it." Sigh, the villager sighed without forcing. Casually asked, "Do you have any way? There may be a way to give it a try." What? The villagers casually asked, but to their surprise, Youming really had an idea. The villagers in the distance suddenly gathered around. "Tell me quickly." Youming slowly analyzed, only the old cripple has been here during the meal these past 2 days, and no one else has been guarding us for the rest of the time. There is only 1 meal a day, which means we have 1 day to move before the next meal. As long as we solve the problem of the blood cicada, perhaps we can at least escape from prison. How can we solve it? Let's work together to get rid of it, the villager asked. Youming shook his head and said, "The blood cicada is as fast as lightning, we can't catch it at all, it can easily penetrate the head, and its body hardness is probably something we can't destroy, so we can only avoid it." He continued, "Do you remember that the old cripple came from the end we came from and didn't turn back? The corpses of Li Man and Li Guzi were also transported to the other end. I guess the other end must lead to a dumping ground or directly to the outside world, otherwise it's impossible to let the corpses rot and smell in the cave." The villagers nodded, and Youming, the young boy, was indeed mentally agile, which was something they had never thought of. Youming continued, "My solution is to split up and run. Blood cicadas cannot pursue people in both directions at the same time. Perhaps one direction can escape, while the direction of throwing corpses undoubtedly has a higher survival rate. However, I didn't finish speaking, but everyone understood. People from one direction are being chased by blood cicadas in exchange for the hope of survival from another direction, which is just hope. The villagers didn't speak and sat down in their seats. When it was absolutely necessary, everyone didn't want to gamble. That's right, it's a bet, the bet is one's own destiny. I spent this night in peace and tranquility. One day, the villagers did indeed discover that another person had died. This ultimate torture was maddening, and no one knew if the next person to die silently would be themselves. We must give it a try. The villagers gathered together, quietly planning something, but not everyone dared to gamble their lives. In the end, only 9 people decided to escape from prison. They have assigned directions, with the future direction set as a dead end and the direction of littering set as a way of survival. They have agreed with each other that no matter who can survive and leave, they must take care of the families of others. Swear blood as a pledge. Bang! 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 The old cripple came to eat, and the villagers numbly threw out empty buckets and dead people without showing any abnormality. After the old cripple left, the 9 of them came to Youming and asked if there was anything else to pay attention to. Youming leaned against the wall, feeling weak and powerless. It was impossible for him to run in this state. He thought for a moment and said, "Eat a full meal, that's how you have the strength to run. Take action later to avoid encountering the old cripple who threw the body back. Remember the direction you have chosen, for both yourself and your family. Finally, I wish you success." The 9 people nodded with tears in their eyes, gulping down the hard-to-swallow food. The other villagers didn't eat much, so they gave as much food as possible to these 9 people. After an hour, the 9 of them adjusted their own state to their best, dressed up and ready to go at the prison gate. No one retreated, their eyes only focused on perseverance. Remember your direction. Let's go, run. When one person emerged from the cage like a fierce tiger, they rushed out with a loud thud, followed closely by others, with a difference of only milliseconds. The light source is limited, making it difficult to distinguish who chose the path of life and who chose the path of death. The cicada dish shook, and the people inside the prison did not see the shadow of the blood cicada, but knew that the blood cicada had already been chased out. At this speed, everyone was sweating profusely. In a moment, everyone only heard a desperate and indignant roar. Why, they all chose their way of life. Why? The sound came to a sudden halt. Chapter 5. Fake Death. You are listening at novelfull.audio. There are still 18 people left in the prison, all silent. The 9 people who escaped from prison this time all died. Some people did not follow the rules and chose the path of survival with greater hope, ultimately killing everyone. It can be imagined that the 9 people lined up and were one by one pierced through the skull by the blood cicada. There is a chance to come according to the agreement. Someone tugged at their hair in pain, grabbing the ground with their head and crying bitterly. "Ah, I don't know whose sigh it is," echoing in the cell for a long time, enveloping every desperate heart. Is it unexpected? Youming was not surprised. He emphasized it at the last moment or had a premonition that human hearts are the most difficult to predict. Is it sad? It's hard to say, after all, people are not killed by heaven and earth for themselves. Perhaps from the perspective of those who live at this moment, being able to be released a few days earlier is also a good thing. The blood cicada flew back unsteadily, attacking as fast as lightning and now like a drunken strong man. This time, it did not immediately enter the container, but stood at the edge, looking down at the people in the prison. The blood cicada was there, like a death talisman, like a sharp blade hanging above everyone's heads. Perhaps due to its escape from prison, it caused dissatisfaction and warned, making the villagers even more anxious and uneasy. It's not quite right. Youming noticed that the blood cicada's body became even more bright red, possibly due to consuming too much blood for a short period of time, almost purple. At this moment, it trembled slightly, its frequency getting faster and faster, gathering all its strength as if it was excreting something. In the end, something protruded from its head, and a flash of light instantly disappeared into the dish. At the same time, the color of the blood cicada faded and it flapped its wings, as if it had relaxed a lot and flew into the dish. Surprisingly, it's like this. Youming frowned, somewhat understanding. At this moment, he no longer believed in the ghost stories of building a cave. The Lord Pan captured them just to feed this blood cicada and suck blood and condense beads. This is really terrifying and evil. And a dozen or so strong men, living beings, were used for this despicable purpose. For the Lord, the lives of mortals are really worthless. Although we still don't know what the condensation bead is and what its purpose is, it's not the time to explore now. How to save life is the key. The blood cicada's body is as usual, and this night, it will inevitably have to suck blood again. As expected, when everyone was unaware, the blood cicada completed its feeding. Finally, someone couldn't bear this torture and committed suicide by crashing into a wall. Their neck broke, their head cracked, and their brains popped out. It was evident that they were determined to die. Such a tragic situation made others who were already on the brink of collapse vomit, and this scene was more nerve-stimulating than the blood cicada killing. The blood cicada seemed a bit disdainful and did not consume the blood of the dead. Another 4 people decided to make another desperate attempt, 2 lives on the same path, 2 deaths on the same path. This time, no one harbored any ulterior motives. The result was a scream coming from both directions, but no one succeeded. In the startled eyes of the remaining 12 people, an identical blood cicada flew from each end and the 2 became one. Still able to clone. This. Unsolvable. I have given up and accepted my life, just like those who are struggling in other cells. Those who are still alive for the time being have become walking dead. A dozen or so dead people were outside, which was a considerable task for the old cripple who was cleaning up the bodies, traveling back and forth several times. But he had no complaints and enjoyed it, even happily saying, "Yesterday was quite lively." When he shook the cicada dish at the door, he became even happier and his mouth suddenly cracked countless cracks. It's time to harvest again. He carefully took out a porcelain bottle from his pocket, opened the lid, tilted the cicada dish towards the mouth of the bottle, and poured it down. He packed the harvest inside and put it back into his pocket. Then he looked inside the prison and saw a group of half-dead people, not feeling strange. As expected, he saw many things. On the 5th day, out of the 30 people in Ligia village, only 10 survived. During this period, many people were arrested and imprisoned in different cells. Smoking, fear, despair, constantly repeating what had happened in this cell. And this silent cell, just like the other cells they had when they first arrived. There was only Youming left who didn't eat or drink, and it was precisely because of this that blood cicada never found him. Youming couldn't hold on anymore and found it difficult to concentrate on the cicada dish. His mind was scattered, his consciousness was disrupted, and his thoughts began to be mixed. Every cell has a blood cicada. Is it a clone? Or there are many blood cicadas. What's the use of the old cripple taking away the condensation beads? Many people have died. Will I die? Maybe it's the next moment. Turtle breath. Turtle breath. The last thought disappeared, and Youming cut off all control over his body. His heartbeat stopped, his pulse disappeared, his breathing paused, and he returned to nothingness, as if he were a dead person. He set a wake-up period of 2 days, and after 2 days, he will wake up, or he will never wake up again. On the 6th day. As usual, villagers throw corpses outside, but they can't help but think. Who would throw my body? Passing by the underworld, I saw that he had been motionless for a long time, so I stepped forward to take a breath and shook my head. He had already hardened. Youming was thin, and the villagers could pick him up alone and throw him to the old cripple who was about to leave. The old cripple looked at it with confusion, and even though he had seen it many times, his face was still chilling. The villager hesitated in fear and said, He starved to death. After speaking, he quickly ran back to the deepest part of the cell and hid in the shadow of the wall. The old cripple chuckled and rarely took the initiative to ask, didn't he eat? He hasn't eaten, he hasn't eaten. A response came from the corner. He. There are really smart people. The old cripple didn't care about those, piled up Youming's body on the cart, pushed the cart creaking, and left with deep and shallow feet. This road, which is known as a way of survival by the villagers, is also difficult to walk, winding in numerous forks. It is estimated that only the old cripple knows which road leads to where. He had to walk this route several times a day, familiar with it, and soon arrived at his destination, a sinkhole. He erected the cart next to the abyss and poured the body down like dumplings. Unexpectedly, Youming's clothes caught the crack in the cart and hung in mid-air. Hungry ghost, it's really troublesome. He walked up to the front, holding on to Youming with one hand, uncoupling the hook with the other, and then threw it hard, watching the corpse plummet and be devoured by darkness. Go ahead with peace of mind and make your final contribution, the old cripple said softly, tapping his bangs rhythmically, with a crisp voice reaching the bottom of the abyss. And sing. Bang. 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 Life is full of blood, and cicadas condense a drop of tears. Bang. 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 Don't be careless, dead insects have left behind. Youming didn't know all of this, he was completely immersed in feigning death, as if he had really died. The best trick is not only to deceive others, but most importantly, to deceive oneself. Chapter 6. Corpse Pit. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Youming felt a lot of pain, and there was pain all over his body. He didn't open his eyes for the first time after waking up, but instead recalled his previous plan of feigning death. First, not eating or drinking. Without letting the blood cicada find him, he planted the foreshadowing of starvation, trusted the villagers, and then trusted the old cripple, not letting him harm him. Secondly, there are doubts about whether the blood cicada will suck blood after feigning death, which have been answered by the indifference of the blood cicada after the villagers committed suicide. Finally, it was feigning death itself. For the sake of truth, this time he truly believed that he had died and maximized the benefits of turtle breath in order to escape. Based on the current results, it appears to be successful. At this point, carefully feel your body and surrounding environment. The physical condition is very poor, first of all, hunger and thirst. After the turtle rests and pretends to die, it consumes the last bit of its potential. If it doesn't eat or drink for a day, it will really starve to death. Secondly, there were multiple injuries to the body, including dislocations in both hands and feet. It should have been a fall from a high place, but fortunately there were no internal injuries, thanks to the cushion underneath the body. Its corpses, a large number of corpses. It was obvious that he subtly moved his fingers and touched some of the severed limbs and arms. After patiently listening for a while without any sound, I slowly opened my eyes. There are very few fluorites and the light is dim, but because I have been underground for so many days, I have slightly developed some night vision ability. He sat up, looked around, and couldn't help but take a breath of cold air. At this moment, he is standing on a mountain of corpses. Later on, a rotten smell mixed with evil and corpse chi rushed into the nose, making it nauseating. It took a while to adapt. The cornerstone of the corpse mountain is a pile of white bones, while the middle section is a decaying corpse. The top where it is located is relatively fresh. I'm afraid there are thousands of people. It's too scary. The cave of this Lord's Plate is like a devouring demon cave. I didn't expect him to have killed so many people. Youming must leave the corpse mountain as soon as possible. It is not advisable to stay on it for a long time. I don't know when another corpse will fall, so don't be crushed to death. He casually tore off some cloth strips and tied the dislocated hand to his chest to fix it, so he couldn't control his foot. Try to use the good one as much as possible. Then he slowly moved towards the edge, holding onto the clothes on the corpse to stabilize his figure. During this time, he touched something indescribable. Corpse fluid, brain, cold head, and withered body, passing through a pile of corpses. Without a strong heart, he couldn't hold on and was not worthy of being an outsider. The silent underground abyss was filled with only one's own breathing, accompanied by 1,000 corpses. Ordinary people had already gone crazy, and even Youming himself didn't know why he was so calm. After reaching the edge, he looked down and knew that his current physical and mental strength did not allow him to climb down. With a heart-wrenching, he let go and slid down. If a person dies and a bird faces the sky, they will not die for thousands of years. At this point, you can't fall to death anymore. Fortunately, the corpse mountain has some slopes and significant resistance, with a slow descent speed. However, it is quite difficult to pass through the middle layer of decaying corpses, which is really disgusting. He forced himself not to look or think. As it was about to land, a mutation occurred, with a broken bone diagonally inserted into the glide path, not much sharper than a sword. Under the action of gravitational acceleration, if it collided with a designated abdomen and intestines, it had no choice but to roll to the side, throw it in mid-air, and fall heavily into a pile of skeletons. It took a while for Youming to moan, which also proved that he had not been killed by the fall. His body was uncomfortable and his injuries became even more severe. He struggled to crawl up and slowly climbed to the edge of the abyss pit, far away from the corpse mountain. He leaned heavily against the wall, feeling his back wet. There were many water droplets oozing from the rock wall, and he was overjoyed. He quickly dug his mouth to suck on it. As for whether there was any toxin, he didn't care at this time. After replenishing some water, he finally took a deep breath. At this moment, he wished he had a strong body. Judging from the prevailing methods, poison mage's spells are strong, but now it seems that I prefer an ability similar to Vajra's indestructible body. Youming bared his teeth and fantasized that an optimistic attitude would be more helpful in overcoming difficulties and obstacles. Shaking his head fiercely, he threw this unrealistic idea out of his mind. It was urgent to find a safe place to recuperate as soon as possible. He touched the walls of the pit and slowly explored forward. Now, he could only measure the size of the corpse pit and whether there were underground openings or not. As for escaping from the top, it is not realistic. It is impossible to reach the top from high, and not to mention that there are injuries on the body now. The slippery walls of the pit also prevent the possibility of climbing. After struggling to move for a quarter of an hour, he suddenly had nothing in his hand and muttered to himself that it was not good. Without time to react, he was pulled into a vortex by a huge force. Youming was fiercely suppressed by someone, covering his mouth and nose. He struggled hard with his hands and feet, but unfortunately, his strength was not enough to break free. In my heart, I was horrified. How could there be a living person in this corpse pit and Jedi? Is it an enemy or a friend? Suddenly, the person pressed their head against Youming's eyes, and their index finger pressed tightly against their lips, whispering softly. Youming suddenly widened his eyes and gradually gave up resistance because he saw the birthmark on his face. Li Tai saw that Youming recognized him, so he let go of him and carefully looked out of the vortex hole, slumping to the side. Tai Gu. You. How could you be here? Youming asked softly. He was overjoyed and never expected to meet the son of village chief Li here. However, in my memory, Li Tai was a muscular man with a disheveled head and a strong marketing backbone. He looked like a completely different person. What has he gone through in the past 6 months? Li Tai just lowered his head and remained silent. Youming could only temporarily suppress his doubts and look at the vortex hole. This place is very small and can only accommodate a few people. The good news is that there is a small stream like underground water flowing deep inside, which may be the reason why Li Tai chose this place as his residence. He went over and had a full drink. Although he was still hungry, he wouldn't starve to death for the time being. After resting for a while, Youming was not satisfied with the current situation and had to go out to find an exit. As he set off, Li Tai grabbed him. "Don't go out, there's a big terror outside, it's about to come out." "What great terror?" Youming couldn't help but ask when Li Tai finally spoke. Li Tai shook his head, but he didn't let Youming out. After pondering for a moment, Youming sat down and asked, "Brother Tai, you didn't eat or drink either. Did you feign death and get thrown here?" Li Tai looked up in surprise and said, "Are you too?" He then asked, "How are dad and little sister?" Youming nodded and said, "They are all doing well. Uncle also instructed me to inquire about your news. Brother Tai, cheer up and let's escape this ghost place together." Li Tai let out a light chuckle, but there was no response. He had long lost any hope, and now he's just surviving. After hesitating for a moment, Youming asked, "Tai Gu, how did you survive after so long?" Unexpectedly, Li Tai, who was silent, suddenly became excited and trembled, saying, "Eat meat. I eat meat. Eat the meat of the villagers." 2 lines of turbid tears flowed from his sunken eye sockets. Chapter 7. Corpse Worms. You are listening at novelfull.audio. I am the devil, I eat human flesh. I am the devil. Even if I go out, how do you want me to face those villagers' families and tell them, only I survived, eating their families' meat to survive? Li Tai roared low, hysterical, half human and half ghost, approaching madness. Youming hugged Li Tai, controlled him, and comforted him. "I'm sorry, Brother Tai, it's not your fault. No one will blame you. Didn't you say there's a big horror outside? Stay calm." Li Tai calmed down upon hearing this, but fortunately he didn't go crazy. At this moment, a sound came and Li Tai pushed Youming away, pushing him into the shadow and hiding himself. Pointed outside and issued a silent warning. "It's here." The tense atmosphere made Youming dare not breathe, but his curiosity still prevailed. He wanted to know what the Great Terror was and looked out carefully. A half-shang-long white object wriggled between the skeleton and slowly climbed to the middle of the corpse mountain. After inspecting for a moment, the target was selected, and a huge, sharp, and barbed mouthpiece was opened to easily bite the bone, swallowing a human leg into the abdomen. After a burst of movement in the abdominal cavity, a smooth leg bone was spit out again, with no blood or flesh left. Pada. The leg bones fell into the pile of bones on the ground and merged into one. Li Tai was even more frightened when he heard the commotion, sweating profusely and trembling in the shadows. Youming squinted his eyes and felt a sense of shock in his heart. What a big maggot that feeds on human flesh. This corpse mountain exists to support it. The maggot seemed to have not eaten enough yet and crawled into the corpse mountain. It took a long time for it to appear from the other end, swelling up a lot and slowly crawling towards the opposite side of the vortex hole. Youming frowned and said to Li Tai, "Brother Tai, this is a great opportunity. Let's follow up quickly." "What?" Li Tai couldn't believe it upon hearing this. He couldn't even dodge in time. This kid actually wanted to take the initiative to die. Subconsciously, he said, "You're not sick, are you?" Youming urgently said, "Brother Tai, believe me. That maggot has already finished eating, and its desire to attack will greatly decrease. Follow it, maybe you can find an exit." Seeing that Li Tai was still hesitating, he analyzed again, and I have carefully observed that it only has one mouthpiece and no eyes or ears. I guess it has no visual or auditory senses. Otherwise, Brother Tai, how could you live safely until now? Surprisingly. Li Tai suddenly realized that what Youming said was right. He had always thought he had hidden it well and had not been discovered. He looked at Youming with a complex expression and said, "Xiao Ming, I'm not as good as you. I'll listen to you from behind. Li Tai has been following the village chief's father since he was young, and has been influenced by him. He is also a versatile and skilled person. Otherwise, he wouldn't have thought of feigning death and escaping from prison. At this moment, he couldn't help but admire Youming. In just a short moment, he came up with so much information and made such a bold decision. I have decided that even if I cannot get out, I will do my best to help Xiaoming escape. Youming didn't know what Li Tai was thinking. He was injured and could only be supported by the other person, carefully avoiding the dead bones on the ground and hanging maggots from a distance. Although he guessed that maggots have no hearing and are not even interested in live human flesh, this is all speculation, and it is still necessary to avoid making noise. The massive body of the maggot acted recklessly, moving forward in a straight line, and soon it crawled into a cave. Youming and Li Tai looked at each other with surprise in their eyes. There were clear traces of human excavation in the cave, indicating a high probability of finding an exit. Li Tai's face turned red and his ears turned red. Half a year ago, after discovering maggots, he was afraid and hid in the vortex cave, never exploring the entire corpse pit. So he took the initiative and said, "Xiaoming, wait here, I'll go check the situation first." Youming did not refuse. Li Tai touched the entrance of the cave, first looked inside, and then quickly followed in. Youming waited nervously at a safe distance. After a while, he saw Li Tai appear at the entrance of the cave and waved to him. Breathed a sigh of relief and approached, asking, "How is the situation inside?" Li Tai frowned and said, "It's a bit strange. There's a stone gate inside, but it happens to be blocked by maggots. To enter the gate, you must deal with the maggots." Li Tai's scalp tingles at the thought of that huge mouthpiece. Without weapons, maggots are not easy to deal with. Let's take a look first. The two of them walked into the cave, and after a short passage, there was a stone room with a night pearl illuminating everything. There was only one stone platform, and the maggots were sitting motionless on it, probably digesting. The stone gate is located behind the stone platform, tightly sealed, and it is almost impossible to open it without disturbing the maggots. The problem still lies in how to solve the maggots. Youming made a gesture and gestured to leave before speaking again. The two of them retreated to the cave entrance, and Li Tai said, "Why don't we wait until the maggot goes out to eat next time?" Youming shook his head and said, "The maggot eats very quickly. If we can't open the stone door in a short time and get stuck inside it, it will be troublesome." He didn't mention one more thing. He didn't know how long it was until the maggot ate next time, but he was so hungry that he couldn't hold on anymore. He couldn't go eat human flesh. Of course, this cannot be said in front of Li Tai. What should we do then? So, there shouldn't be any danger in the corpse pit now. Brother Tai, go find any other way out. I'll keep an eye on it from here. Okay, Li Tai went without hesitation. Youming picked up a bone, entered the passage again, threw it into a corner of the stone chamber, and stared at the maggot tightly, seeing that it had no reaction at all. Both sides remained motionless. After an unknown amount of time, the maggot flipped over and revealed a bead pressed under its body. Under the illumination of the night pearl, a ray of light flashed through. Youming keenly catches this, and his heart moves. Li Tai returned and shook his head. Now it is confirmed that the stone gate behind the maggot is the only exit. After a while, the maggot woke up and wriggled incessantly on the stone platform, even raising its head and making a fine hissing sound from its mouthparts. Li Tai trembled imperceptibly. The maggot lowered its head and sucked the bead into its belly, seeming to have some side effect. Its body writhed in pain, almost tangling itself into a knot. Finally, it couldn't bear it and spat out the bead. After slowing down, I couldn't help but swallow it again, but I still vomited it out. After several times, I finally gave up. The two peeping people were confused. Tai Gu, do you know what that bead is? Youming suddenly spoke up, which startled Li Tai. Seeing that the maggots had not started killing, he breathed a sigh of relief and said, "I don't know anyone except for stones or wood." Youming said, "I'll go get that bead." "No way." Li Tai realized that he couldn't keep up with this kid's thinking. He always kept silent and would never stop talking. "What are you doing with that bead? It's too dangerous. Maggots are very concerned about that bead. If we can get it, and if we confront each other in the future, it can also be used as a deterrent. This is the only way to break the situation now." "Okay. Then I'll go." After listening to Youming's analysis, Li Tai volunteered and said, "You have injured your legs and feet and are unable to move. Let me go. If I have any accidents, you should run quickly." Tai Gu. Youming was about to say something, but was stopped by Li Tai. He had no choice but to say, "It's okay if we can't do it. It's important to save our lives." "I know." Li Tai stepped into the stone chamber and only then realized that his footsteps were a bit frivolous. He had already had a shadow over maggots, but now he is shivering in the fire, and the pressure is not too great. Finally walking to the edge of the stone platform, one can clearly see the ups and downs of the maggot's abdominal cavity, accompanied by a foul smell, horror, and nausea. He observed for a while, found the position of the bead, straightened his heart, and directly reached out to get it, deciding to make a quick decision. At this moment, a sudden mutation occurred, and the maggot, which had no visual or auditory senses, suddenly woke up. Its mouthpiece accurately held Li Tai's left hand, gently sucked in, and then closed. Click. Li Tai's arm broke at the same root. Chapter 8. Copper Skin. You are listening at novelfull.audio. People have never seen ghosts, so they are afraid of ghosts. Once a person has seen a ghost and encounters it in person, they may not be so afraid anymore. Li Tai is in this situation at this time. Previously, he had been afraid of maggots and had a shadow in his heart, hiding for half a year. At present, being bitten off by maggots, although the pain was severe and his eyes turned black, it only aroused his ferocity. "It's no big deal, it's just death." Before the maggot could completely swallow its arm, its right hand without hesitation plunged back into the body of the worm, and with a slight grope, it found the bead and threw it at Youming with all its strength. "Xiaoming, continue." Youming firmly caught it, turned around, and ran out, which was the only way to save Li Tai. As expected, the maggot could sense the direction of the bead and decisively abandoned Li Tai, chasing outward. Li Tai was bleeding incessantly, feeling dizzy. He saw some crystal-clear skin follicles on the stone table, which should have been molted by maggots. He didn't care about anything and randomly grabbed and blocked the wound, then fell into a coma. Outside, Youming limped and ran at a slow pace. When he turned around, his spirits were all rising. The maggot has a bulky body but a fast speed, and it is already in front of us. Its huge mouthparts are dripping with corpse water, dripping on the ground and corroding shallow holes, making a sizzling sound, about to bite it up. Youming wanted to throw away the beads in his hand, but he was afraid of losing one and losing another, and his efforts would fall short. With a flash of spiritual light, he remembered the scene of maggots devouring beads. In a moment of desperation, he made a decision to change his life. "Even if I die, I won't leave it for you." Within milliseconds of being bitten off his neck, Youming swallowed the bead in one gulp. Time seems to have come to a standstill at this moment. The corpse pit, the corpse mountain, and the rising maggot mouthparts are dense and stagnant in mid-air. Youming's body was undergoing earth-shattering changes. The beads that even maggots cannot melt instantly melt into their mouths, transforming into mysterious forces that rush to various parts of the skin, improving the cortex. At the same time, an inexplicable force rises inside their bodies, adding an extra force out of thin air. Pang. Time returns to passing, step out with 1 foot, jump out a foot wide, and stand firmly. Clenching hands tightly, not only did the injury disappear, but also added a few 100 pounds of strength, as if there was an endless amount of strength. Water and milk blend together without any discomfort, as if everything should be like this. Youming touched his neck, only to find a shallow wound, and the defense of his skin bag also increased. Maggots, that's all. It's my turn next. Youming launched a direct counterattack, bullying himself and hitting the head of the maggot with a punch. Unfortunately, maggots have no skeleton and are covered in thick fat all over their bodies, which drains most of their strength. Despite this, they also blow away hundreds of pounds of their body. For the first time since its birth, maggots have suffered such a great loss. They are furious and stand up, biting off their huge mouthparts once again. Youming is determined to test the defense of his own skin bag, but he doesn't dodge. Now he will confront you head-on. His right hand was bitten, and he reached into his mouth with suction, stabbing and stirring it upside down. The maggot's body was painful to eat, but its mouthparts were also deflated without a bite, only piercing the epidermis. Fortunately, the corpse poison has been released, as long as you wait for the other party to emit the poison. Can we really wait until that moment? Youming also felt a numbness in his neck and arms, worrying about Li Tai's condition and no longer keeping his hands. Grasping the intestinal wall inside the maggot with the right hand and the epidermis with the left hand, they exerted both forces and fiercely tore the maggot in half. Afraid that it might not die completely, he slammed his head several dozen times and smashed the rugged mouthpiece into pieces before finally giving up. The corpse water splashed all over the face, and the ground was covered with undigested meat. The scene was both disgusting and terrifying. Youming didn't care about wiping, so he took 3 steps and 2 steps back to the stone chamber. Seeing that Li Tai had passed out, fortunately his severed arm was no longer bleeding, his heart calmed down a bit. He walked to the stone gate and pressed it, not moving at all. I don't know if I can break it with my current strength. The maggot was obviously kept in captivity and has now died. To avoid long dreams, we need to leave this place quickly. Bang, 1 punch. Bang bang, 2 fists. Youming used all his strength to pound the stone gate, and his fists felt a sharp pain. I am aware of the changes in my body. Although my strength has increased and my skin is unbreakable, my muscles and bones have not changed. Even with such a beating, I may still break bones and tear my muscles. But he didn't stop. After 50 punches, the right fist was weakened and unable to droop. Fortunately, the stone gate on one side has also loosened. Change left fist. After dozens of punches, there was a loud bang and the stone gate collapsed. Youming was overjoyed and turned around to support Li Tai, leaving the stone chamber. Outside the door, there is a familiar corridor, facing upwards on the left and downwards on the right. He pondered for a moment and continued down several tens of zhang deep underground. A stone chamber in an underground cave. The ordinary-looking poison mage was quietly practicing when at a moment, he suddenly sprayed blood and his eyes were filled with shock and anger. The corpse bug has had an accident. Who is it? Who is so bold? He said. He slammed the door and whispered, everyone come immediately. Quickly, the 8 disciples gathered in the hall one after another, and everyone was very confused and nervous, not knowing why Pancher was angry. Pan's sharp gaze swept across all faces like a knife, without any abnormalities, and he snorted coldly, follow me. At this moment, even Lu Ruoruo, who had always been lively and active, dared not make mistakes and pulled Chengfeng's sleeve to strengthen his courage. Chengfeng was very helpless and did not object. As everyone followed Pancher towards the depths of the cave, some gradually realized that it was a place they had never been to before, and finally arrived at a damaged stone gate. Pan's face turned even bluer. Stepping into the stone chamber, both the corpse worm and the molt were gone. Continuing forward, we arrived at the dim corpse pit. The disciples all changed their faces when they saw a mountain of corpses piled up with thousands of corpses. Killing a few people is nothing, slaughtering 1,000 people is simply a devilish act, and thinking that these people were captured by myself and others, my face suddenly became uncertain. After they caught the person, they left it unattended and didn't pay any attention. It seems that Pancher has many things hidden from these disciples. How unreasonable. At this moment, Pan discovered a dead corpse insect that could no longer die. Seeing the chaos everywhere, he went completely insane, and a surging poisonous gas was released from his body, spreading throughout the entire corpse pit. Not good, it's cartilage gas. The disciples fell to the ground one after another, feeling weak and powerless to resist. Master Pan, spare your life. It has nothing to do with me. I didn't do it. Several disciples begged for mercy one after another, without any doubt that Master Pan would harm the assassin. In fact, they did not have much relationship between master and disciple, and what they learned was only superficial. Their cultivation level was comparable to that of mastering the Dharma, and they were able to deal with ordinary people. It is impossible to resist the master. Humph. Pan walked up to a few people and said coldly, "Who killed the corpse bug?" They don't even admit it, do they? Then let's stay with those corpses. Seeing no one admit it, he took out a porcelain vase and said, "I will only punish the chief culprit. Those who report and expose will receive the antidote." The disciples looked at each other, unsure of who did it. At this moment, senior brother Chengfeng murmured something in a low voice. Unable to hear it accurately, Pan leaned down and asked, "Feng, do you know who it is? I usually value you the most, as long as..." A wind blade pierced through the abdomen of the plate, shooting out from the back with flesh and blood, dissipating into the air. Chengfeng stood up and patted the dust off his body. There were 2 small tornadoes in his nose, with no signs of poisoning. He said, "Pan, sure," I said, "I have finally waited for this day." Chapter 9. Chengfeng. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chengfeng is a descendant of a family in Hongshu town. Unlike other dilapidated families, Chengfeng was a monk 1,000 years ago, and this glorious period has long been forgotten. Chengfeng has been intelligent since childhood and enjoys flipping through ancient books. One day, he found a copy of the Wind Classic in the corner of his old house, but did not make a sound. He silently practiced it and was unexpectedly introduced to the door to cultivate the Tongfa. He was overjoyed and thought he would soar to the sky from then on, but was unexpectedly selected as a disciple by the new Lord Pan. The whole family was filled with joy, thinking that they were on the side of the mage's thigh. Only the person involved knew that Pan was not genuinely teaching him, but just using his identity to better control Red Tree Town. And, because he was at the beginning of practicing wind technique, he keenly realized that he had been poisoned by the secret, and his life and fortune were all in the other party's mind, so he was even more afraid to reveal the secrets of his already practiced wind technique. A few years have passed, and Chengfeng's cultivation has improved. Fengfa has already broken through the small Dharma, and officially become a mage. According to the ancient system, he can also lead a place and become a lord. At this time, Chengfeng was only 18 years old, and Pan was just the pinnacle of Xiaofa. 2 more years later, the poison technique also broke through. The 20-year-old wine poison double material little mage has such a talent that can be called a genius even in a powerful clan. He tried thousands of methods, but still couldn't detoxify his body. He had to continue hiding his strength to avoid being discovered by the disc. The more genius he is, the more painful his heart becomes. Although he has the ability to soar to the sky, he can only be trapped in a small poisonous territory. On the surface, he is still a good senior brother and disciple of his junior brothers and sisters, and a good disciple of Pancher. In fact, he has to restrain the urge to sneak attack Pancher every day. Until one day, he heard news that made him even more uneasy. For a long time, he believed that the biggest ceremonial guard on the plate was the blood cicada. He had spent a lot of energy researching wind spells, hoping to suppress the blood cicada, and also secretly inquired about news from the old cripple. Old man, I have brought you wine again. The gentle smile of Chengfeng is like the gentle breeze of spring, even the lonely old cripple doesn't dislike it. The old cripple took the wine, greedily took a sip, and then took a small sip, enjoying himself. The wrinkles on his face rippled, and he said, "Feng, you know how to respect the elderly. The other little ones ran away when they saw me." "Hee, it's good if you always like it," Chengfeng sighed. "Unfortunately, you didn't let me help you. Your work is too heavy." The old cripple said nonchalantly, "What's the point of working for the sect? Besides, I'm not sure if I can trust you to do it." Chengfeng took the opportunity to ask, "What is the use of these cicada tears? Submit to the sect, you don't have the right to know yet. One day, when you become the core disciple of the sect, you will know." "Ha! Isn't it for the disc master?" The old cripple seemed to disdain Pan. "He's just an outsider disciple, not yet qualified." After careful consideration in Chengfeng's heart, he flattered on the surface, "The old man must have gained the trust of the sect, that's why he entrusted such an important task to you." After hearing this, the old cripple became complacent and, with the blessing of alcohol, couldn't help but say a few more words. "I heard that Pan had offended someone. That's why he took on the task of raising blood cicadas and went out of the sect to avoid trouble. I was also sent by the sect to supervise. This blood cicada is a precious treasure of the sect, and there must be no loss. However, that Pan is also considered a character. When he successfully refines the poisonous insect with his own life, he may not be able to go further." Chengfeng received the key information and left after a brief conversation. "Return to your own room, lost in thought. Sure enough, I can't be careless." Unexpectedly, Pan is secretly refining the poisonous insect of his own life. Regardless of the type of mage, those who possess their own life items are 1 in a million. Life items can increase attack damage, protect life, and assist. There are many benefits, and everyone wants to have them. This destiny is divided into innate destiny and acquired destiny. The plate is obviously refining acquired destiny items. If successful, its strength will be further enhanced. I just don't know what the original destiny of the disc is. Where is it refined? Destruction must be prevented, time waits for no one. In the following time, despite multiple investigations by Chengfeng, no clues were found. Helplessly, this underground cave was so vast that it was widely spread. Pan sure is indeed brilliant. On the surface, blood cicadas suck blood, while on the surface, corpse insects devour flesh, creating a perfect cycle. No wonder I can't find it. Returning to the present, after the successful surprise attack by Chengfeng, the victory is already in hand. He gently shook his folding fan, sent out several tornadoes, dispelled the poisonous mist, and said to his junior brothers and sisters, "Take the antidote and leave. From now on, the highly poisonous leader will no longer exist." The disciples were not very clear about the sudden changes, but it was obvious that their respected senior brother had become a mage, and from then on, he held a noble status and dared not say much. He had to leave this place of trouble as soon as possible. Lu Ruoro took a deep look at Chengfeng before leaving. "It's really a good plan, it's tolerable. The wind poison double technique is great. I teach a good disciple." Pan obviously thought that killing the corpse insect was Chengfeng's masterpiece. He took out a few bottles of pills and ate them all in one go. His abdominal flesh and blood struggled to merge, and his complexion slowly recovered. Chengfeng did not explain anything, nor did he stop him. The opponent was killed and backfired by the venomous insect, causing a significant loss of strength. In addition, he is now seriously injured, and his strength is not outstanding. The reason for keeping him alive is to ask for the antidote to the toxins in his body. Chengfeng Yu said, "The first time we met, you poisoned me. You really are a good master. Since then, your poison has been increasing day by day. If I guess correctly, it's corpse poison, right? Not bad. At this point, Pan no longer concealed it. Unfortunately, in a few more months, his life's corpse insect will be refined, and in the end, his success will fall short. I hate it so much. Do you want an antidote? Unfortunately, if the corpse bug is here, the antidote is there. If the corpse bug is dead, this poison will not be able to cure it. This is your own fault, I can't believe it. Ha ha ha. Pan laughed wildly, even though he was seriously injured, he was still very happy. Chengfeng suddenly changed his color, waved his hand and fanned out 2 wind blades, cutting off Pan's legs. Pan, you still want to deceive me. Master Apprentice, I originally wanted to give you a dignified way to die. Don't force me to throw you to those villagers. You look like this now, guess how they will serve you. Pan writhed on the ground in pain, and the young wizard's physical fitness was no different from that of ordinary people. What frightened him even more was the threat of Chengfeng. He had always regarded the villagers as worthless, and if they really fell into the hands of a group of mortals, it would be more difficult to live than to die, which he could never accept. Hey, even if there's an antidote, I won't tell you. Good disciple, I'm waiting for you. Pan's face suddenly turned purple-black, and along with his body, it swelled up. In the next moment, it exploded with a bang. Puzzy, shredded meat and blood rain flew everywhere, with each piece of flesh carrying years of venom, corroding the ground into large and small pits, making the scene even more chaotic. Chengfeng stood in place, calm and composed, with a layer of wind surrounding him, blocking countless poisonous flesh and blood from the outside, completely committing suicide without any visual disc. This move was originally intended to deal with the blood cicada, but now it seems to have a good effect. His eyes were gloomy, and he didn't ask for an antidote. The corpse was still in his body, which was a hidden danger. Chapter 10. Confrontation. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Youming hid in the shadow, observing everything that happened in the corpse pit. Not long ago, he helped Li Tai walk towards the bottom of the corridor. Unexpectedly, he quickly walked to the end and saw a mess of rubble. He was pleasantly surprised to find 3 red beads lying quietly on a stone platform. In order to obtain the previous one, Li Tai paid the price of 1 arm, and now these 3 are really obtained without any effort. Youming couldn't help but sigh. He guessed that the maggot had sensed the extraordinary qualities of these 4 beads and dug them out, but unfortunately couldn't absorb them. In the end, all of them were cheap for him. He grabbed the bead in his hand and swallowed it again without hesitation. In the current crisis, enhancing strength is the most important thing. Without any surprise, the red pearl quickly dissolved and integrated into the skin, greatly enhancing his physical defense. At the same time, he felt that his body had also developed a certain resistance to toxins. The numbness in the area where he had been bitten by maggots had weakened a lot, and the injury from his right fist had also been completely healed. The 2 fists collided with a loud bang, adding several hundred pounds of strength again. Now the body has nearly 1,000 pounds of strength. The strong feeling was intoxicating, and Youming adapted to the new energy, his heart settled down. He glanced at Li Tai, still unconscious, and placed him on the stone platform to feed a red pearl. After a while, there was no response. Opening his mouth, the red pearl rolled out. It's useless. Youming is puzzled. Maggots and Li Tai cannot decompose the red pearl. Is it only effective for themselves? He collected 2 beads and did not use them immediately. Red beads can instantly heal the body, so they need to be kept for emergency use. He quietly returned along the corridor when suddenly a rapid sound of footsteps came, heading towards the corpse pit. Come so fast. Without hesitation, this is a good opportunity to inquire about the enemy's situation, carefully hanging behind. Fortunately, deep underground, there are many places with unclear views hidden in a depression on the pit wall. The skill of turtle breathing is activated shallowly, adjusting the heartbeat and breathing, and integrating with the environment. If not observed closely, it is almost impossible to detect. Listening to those angry and despondent words, it seemed that maggots were quite important to him. I unintentionally destroyed his good deeds, which can be considered as killing the people. Subsequently, the master and disciple engaged in violence, and he was delighted to see it, nothing more than a dog biting its fur. When those disciples fled in a panic, they didn't even pay attention to his existence. Youming took the opportunity to vividly remember the appearance of these people, and in the future, he would inevitably retaliate against them one by one. But this corpse poison is indeed a trouble. At present, he only relies on a small amount of toxin resistance in his skin to support himself, and once the toxin enters the flesh and bones, it becomes troublesome. At this moment, he and Chengfeng had a certain empathy for each other. If Chengfeng could ask for an antidote, it would be best, but unfortunately, the plan was very decisive, and he would explode on his own. Even if he died, he would have to bear the consequences. The initiator has died, and Youming is not happy at all. There is a more powerful character, Chengfeng, who is actually a dual-type mage. Whether it is poison, wind blade, dragon scroll, or wind gang, they all seem to be very powerful spells. I don't know if I can break them. Have you seen enough? Come out. Chengfeng stood in the corpse pit, with shredded meat at his feet and a corpse mountain behind him, yet still elegant and unaffected, speaking into the shadows. Discovered. Youming was first startled, then calmed down. Now that he was no longer Wu Xiaomon, he had the power to protect himself. Moreover, Chengfeng was also poisoned by corpses, so there was a possibility of cooperation. Youming stepped out and appeared opposite Chengfeng. It's you. Chengfeng was slightly surprised. Youming was shocked in his heart and said, I was deceived, he didn't even notice me. This wind is really cunning. He didn't say anything, concentrated his fists and feet, and put on a good combat posture, wary of the wind blade that could appear at any time. Chengfeng smiled and said, there's no need for that. I won't take action against you. On the contrary, I want to thank you for removing the corpse bug for me. Youming still hasn't let down his guard, the opponent is a mage. Chengfeng doesn't matter. I feel very sorry for these villagers, he pointed to Shirshan. Believe it or not, I couldn't help but kill people at that time. He walked out of the corpse pit and said, it's best for you to leave within half an hour. Soon, I will completely destroy this place. I've stayed enough in the land of filth and filth. Youming asked, why are you telling me these things? Chengfeng slowed down at the entrance of the cave and said, although I don't know how you killed the corpse bug, you're also poisoned. If you have any problems, you can come to Hongshu town to find me. Youming breathed a sigh of relief when he saw that Chengfeng had really left. It was natural that there was no need for a bloody battle. The top priority now was to take Li Tai and the villagers out of this troubled land. The villagers of Lijia village should. At least there are many villagers from other villages, only half an hour. When Youming returned to the end of the corridor, he was pleasantly surprised to find that Li Tai had already woken up. Brother Tai, how do you feel? Li Tai touched his severed arm and inexplicably said, it's strange. Apart from losing too much blood and feeling dizzy, there's nothing wrong with it. Youming was surprised and said, are you not poisoned? What did you do after I was chased out by maggots? Li Tai roughly explained the details. Youming nodded and said, I understand. I see. Generally speaking, there is an antidote in the vicinity where toxins appear. It is believed that the antidote to corpse poison is the molting of corpse worms. Li Tai accidentally detoxified and treated the injury. No wonder the dish would say, the corpse worm is dead, and this poison has no cure. Even if there is an antidote, I won't tell you, Yun Yun. The method of detoxification has been found. Just raise another corpse worm to obtain the molt, but this heinous and unacceptable method has been abandoned by Youming, and he will definitely not do so. In life, there are actions and inactions. This secret is rotten in my heart. Find other ways to detoxify, and the boat will naturally straighten at the bridgehead. Tai Gu, let's go out quickly. The plate is already dead. I'll tell you slowly on the way. As they walked, Li Tai was surprised to see so many changes happening in a short period of time that he couldn't digest them for a while. The underground cave is riddled with holes, and it is not easy to find the prison where the villagers are being held, especially in times of urgency. However, neither of them has given up the idea of the villagers escaping alone. During this period, Youming entered a stone chamber and saw that the furnishings should belong to a disciple's room. He casually searched and found a copy of the Poison Classic. Without a chance to take a closer look, he placed it in his arms and continued to search. In the end, the two finally arrived at the prison, but it was quiet and the air was filled with a sense of stillness. Looking at each cell one by one, everyone was dead, with corpses stacked together. The heavenly spirit had a big hole in it, and their whole bodies were withered and drained of blood. Xiaoming, the bodies are still hot. They just died soon, and we came a step late. Li Tai cried with tears in his eyes. How ruthless. Youming also gritted his teeth. Since Chengfeng once said he doesn't like killing, there's no need to turn around and slaughter the villagers. There's only one person left, and he's on Youming's must-kill list. Old cripple, no matter where you are, I will kill you.